I would like to welcome you all to our webinar this afternoon, part 3 in our Learn Over Lunch webinar series of the Spring 17 semester. This concludes our series all about networking and personal branding. And today's presentation is part 3, Networking Strategies and Leveraging Career Fairs. So thank you everyone for joining us this afternoon. I am the Manager of Career Services here at the CUNY School of Professional Studies, and I look forward to presenting to you this afternoon. If you are a student or graduate of SPS, we're happy to hear from you in terms of supporting your career development efforts. If you're joining us from outside of CUNY SPS with another campus or organization, I encourage you to reach out to your career centers as well. A couple of housekeeping items. If you have any technical difficulties today, we recommend that you call 1-800-263-6317, then press 1 for GoToWebinar and 2 for tech support. During today's presentation, I will make the presentation, and then there will be an opportunity for your questions to be answered. So I encourage you to send in your questions at any time. Use the chat field in your control panel. As you can see on the screen, it looks like either the image on the left if you have a Mac and the image on the right if you have a PC. So hopefully you'll be able to send in your questions today. While I will be focusing on primarily career fair strategies today, I'm also happy to answer questions that you might have sort of in general about networking, as that has been the focus of our series of webinars this semester, and I wanted to give everyone an opportunity to ask some of those other questions as well. Another mention is that we are offering captioning of today's webinar, so if that's something that you would like to access, please do so at the link on your screen. This link is also it has also been sent out in the chat field, so I hope that those of you who are interested in that will be able to access it. I'd also like to thank my colleague and career advisor, Kelsey Richardson, for her continued support on our webinars. You've definitely heard from her during the semester, so thanks, Kelsey. And also Anthony Sweeney, the virtual campus coordinator here at SPS, who has been really instrumental in making sure that our webinars go off without a hitch, so thank you both. Okay, without any further ado, let's get started. Today's agenda involves the introduction, and then I'll get right into a discussion on career fairs. I'll talk about preparing for the events. I'll talk about what to do during the events, and also I'll share some recruiter perspectives when it comes to your approach to career fairs and how to successfully navigate. Then I'll go over some basics about networking. I'll review parts 1 and 2 of our webinars that we presented this semester, and I'll talk a little bit about tying all of that together in terms of networking and career success. As I had said before, the final part of today's webinar will be a Q&A session, so you're welcome to send in questions related to career fairs or anything else having to do with networking. So here we go. Job fairs, are they still useful? Many, many times when the subject of job fairs comes up, when I'm meeting with colleagues and students and graduates and others that we advise on job search, they say, I don't know about job fairs. I think they're a waste of time. Nobody goes to them anymore and nobody attends and has success attending them anymore. But I'm here to tell you today that yes, they actually are still useful. They may not take the same, they may not have the same results that they had previously, even 5 years or 10 years ago, but they definitely are still useful for, for your job search and for a lot of other reasons. Some of those things, really job fairs are a great way for somebody to kind of get out there. Many times if you're sitting at home job searching, you have a tendency to kind of get stagnant and you just sort of sit there and you read your resume and you send in job applications and you look online at job websites and you're just kind of treading water. And I think job fairs are a good way to sort of build your confidence, get you out and about, talking with people, practicing, talking about yourself and your qualifications, and just overall getting yourself out there in the mix rather than sitting behind your computer screen and waiting for something to happen. They're also helpful because they give you an opportunity to have some face time. And when I say FaceTime, I'm not talking about when you are using FaceTime on your iPhone to talk with your friend or your family members across the country. I'm talking about getting valuable FaceTime with recruiters and other representatives of organizations that might be interested in hiring. And it's also a way to save time. So if you are conducting a job search and you are, again, finding yourself doing a lot of research while you're sitting at your computer, sometimes it's a good way to save time if you go to a job fair and you kind of get information when you're attending the job fair, as opposed to sitting around and waiting on stuff to come into you. They're also very useful if you're interested in learning about a particular industry, finding out more about what types of organizations are out there hiring, what types of organizations are not hiring. It gives you an opportunity to find out about your competition, particularly if you attend a job fair that is industry specific. You can get an idea of what the other types of people are that are searching for the jobs that are out there. It's also a good opportunity to learn about yourself. Sometimes I think, particularly if someone has not really conducted a job search for a number of years or they're making a career transition, a job fair is a good way for a person to sort of grasp what are some of the things that they do well in their job search. Are they effectively communicating their brand? Are they confident in meeting new people that might be able to consider them for job opportunities? Are there certain things that they need to work on? Maybe they need to do a better job of articulating their skill sets or explaining their education and their degree. So job fairs can be a really good way to learn about yourself as well as the industry, competition, and job opportunities. And finally, one of the most obvious reasons that job fairs are still useful is that you can apply for jobs and network. While many organizations that are recruiting for candidates won't necessarily accept your resume for a specific job at the job fair, it's still an opportunity to supplement applications you may have submitted online. And it's also certainly a valuable opportunity to network with employers as well as other job seekers and people in your field. So the answer to this question is yes, they are still useful. So moving into the preparation part of attending job fairs, and I would venture to say that this is perhaps the most important part of attending job fairs and making sure that they are successful ventures for you. One of the first things to do in preparation for job fairs is the obvious. Make sure that your job search toolkit documents are in order. So this includes your resume, certainly, making sure that it's updated with current experience, education, skill sets, and those kinds of things. It's not recommended to take a cover letter to a job fair, but what many job seekers do is they create sort of a summary and objective statement to put on their resume so that they can use that particular resume at a job fair, and that gives an employer a little bit of an idea of their background and their objective without actually providing the cover letter. Another important sort of document that should be updated in preparation for job fairs is your LinkedIn and other social media profiles, but perhaps most importantly, LinkedIn. This is the site that recruiters are using constantly, and one of the first things that a recruiter may do once they've met a candidate at a job fair, particularly if they think they might be a good, strong candidate for an opening, is look at their LinkedIn profile. And it's also one of the primary ways that we recommend you follow up with recruiters you meet at job fairs as well. So you want to make sure that your LinkedIn profile is updated. Your profile picture is, it's a recent photo where they would be able to, it would jog their memory if they go onto your LinkedIn profile after looking at your resume and meeting you at a fair and be able to match your name and your resume with a face. Another document that's important to update in preparation for job fairs is your portfolio. And this is whether you're using an actual hard copy portfolio that you would bring along with you to a job fair or networking event, or if you use an e-portfolio. Much like LinkedIn, if you meet a recruiter and an employer, particularly if you're in a communications, media, design, or creative type field, one of the first things that they might do is look at your e-portfolio to see a sample of your work. Again, if they really thought you might be a strong candidate upon meeting you at the fair, one of the things they'll want to do is really see if you have credibility in terms of the resume and what you presented to them at the fair. So those are just some of the most important documents to update in advance of a fair. A final note that I'll make about a document in advance of job fairs is a personal business card. And this is something that can be very useful. It's not necessarily recommended to use your actual business card with your current employer when you're attending a job fair. So some job seekers find it useful to create a personal business card, which might include your basic contact information, a link to your social media, your LinkedIn profiles, a link to your e-portfolio. If you work in a technical field, perhaps your GitHub link, something like that, and just basic information on a business card, because this is something that you may be able to provide to a representative at a job fair. If they won't accept a resume, they might accept a business card. So this is a tactic that some job seekers use, that they find it useful to create a business card to use in lieu of a resume if one is not accepted. The other thing to do, which is very important in preparation, is research. So you want to make sure that you look at a list of the employers who are attending the career fair. Most of the time, if there's a career fair coming up, they provide a directory of the employers who have signed up to attend the event. So the first thing you want to do is go through that directory and really look through the employers who are attending the event and find out which of those employers might have opportunities that are of interest to you. And once you've looked on the job fair site and gotten an idea of those organizations of interest, you want to go to their company websites. That's one of the first things that you can do. Get a feel for what types of opportunities they have available at the present time. If there are any of those opportunities that you're definitely interested in, you may go so far as to apply on the site before the fair. However, you may want to wait until after the fair and once you've had an opportunity to talk with the recruiter or the employer representative. The other thing that makes sense is to possibly follow those organizations on social media so you can get a feel for what types of things are happening in those organizations before you meet the representatives at the fair. It also makes sense to see if you can tell who, many times a recruiter, particularly with larger organizations, when they're attending job fairs, they will start tweeting and posting on their LinkedIn activity feed about job fairs they're going to. So you may be able to get an idea of which specific people from those organizations will be attending fairs. So it makes a lot of sense to really do that research ahead of time on the employers that you know will be attending the event. Something sort of within the realm of researching the employers planning to attend is to really come up with a strategy for yourself. Decide which of those organizations you really truly must meet if you attend the event, and make them first on your list. Those are the ones that you first and foremost want to meet while you're attending the fair, particularly if you only have an hour of time during a break from your work to attend the event. You want to make sure that you maximize the time that you're there. So I recommend making a list of the first and foremost employers you want to meet versus employers that you may want to meet and those which you feel have the lowest priority. So you can sort of maximize your time when you attend and make sure that you talk to those ones that are at the top of your list first, making your way down the list in terms of priority. Another thing that's important to do ahead of time if you plan to attend a job fair is to work on your pitch. I've spoken about the personal pitch previously many times. This is basically your career mission statement. This is how you describe your career, your qualifications, your education, and your career interests to pretty much anyone you meet. It also can answer the question you might hear in an interview, tell me about yourself. This is a nice way to, when you're talking with a prospective employer or networking, to really show your value and highlight the uniqueness that you offer. The statement is typically a very brief statement, but it's one that's powerful and memorable. I've spoken a little bit about the pitch in the past, and I will touch on it very briefly toward the end of today's webinar, but that's one of the most important things that you can do in preparing for job fairs. The other thing to keep in mind when you're looking through the list of employers who are attending is to sort of tailor your pitch that you will use at the job fair for that particular audience. Keep in mind that if you're speaking with an employer sort of face-to-face in a job interview, the pitch that you might use in responding to tell me about yourself might differ from the pitch that you use with a more general audience at a job fair. The other thing, perhaps obvious, to do in preparation for job fairs is your attire. How will you dress for success and make sure that you're putting your best self forward? One of the important things to do is plan ahead. Something as simple as looking at the weather and deciding from there what kind of business attire you'll wear. Today, for example, is kind of a crummy day outside here in New York, so it would make sense to, base the clothing that you decide to wear for the job fair on the weather. You also want to keep in mind that job fairs can be exhausting. So you want to make sure that while you're dressed professional and you're wearing business attire, that you also don't want to be uncomfortable. So, think about the footwear that you'll wear. If you have the ability to wear comfortable shoes on the way to the event and then change into something that's more professional and appropriate just for a short time, do that. Also think about appropriateness of your attire. And this comes into play when perhaps you're attending a networking event or job fair that's very industry specific. For those people who are creative professionals, perhaps they attend a job fair in the interactive and digital media industry and or a job fair for startups. Perhaps you would want to take a little bit more liberty to wear an outfit that's a little bit more with bold colors, or perhaps you wanted to wear something that's less conservative if you're attending an event that's for a specific industry. Think about the audience and the others who will be attending the affair and how they will dress and try to match that with your own attire. Finally, I thought it made sense to mention what will you bring along with you. Many times if you attend sort of a large-scale job fair, you may want to bring along a portfolio to hold your resumes or a tote bag or briefcase to make sure that you're not sort of fumbling around with papers when you're trying to meet people and trying to make sure that you keep yourself composed and organized. So keep in mind that you may want to prepare to bring a portfolio or a nice tote bag or briefcase or something like that along with you to the events. Keep in mind that you're welcome to and encouraged to send in your questions at any point during the webinar today. So feel free to start sending those in and I'll address them after I've given the remarks. Okay, so moving into during the job fair. These are just a couple of things that I think are most useful in terms of while you're attending the event. So visualize yourself, you're walking through those doors of the event space, and you're getting ready to network your way and talk your way to a job. The first thing you should do is sort of check out the scene. Find if they're handing out directories, make sure you pick up one of those and stand off to the side or have a seat off to the side and go over that list. Compare it to the list that you made during your preparations and figure out if there is maybe an employer that you would really hope to see has had to cancel their attendance, or maybe there have been employers added to the list of attendees that are very much of interest to you. And that way you want to make sure that you have time to meet with those employers that have been late additions to the list. Once you've done that, take a few minutes and relax. Think about all of the preparation you've done. Read over your resume again. Maybe go step into the restrooms and give yourself a silent pep talk. Do whatever it is that you need to do to relax so that you'll be confident and poised when you start talking. And finally, another little pointer that I learned many years ago when I was attending job fairs as a recruiter, that if you start at the end, you might be more likely to be able to talk with some employers, because what happens is many times event organizers put booths in alphabetical order. And most people attending job fairs start at the beginning at company A, that starts with A, and they make their way all the way to the company that starts with Z. But my recommendation is to maybe start at the end of the alphabet, and you'll find that some of those employers, you'll be able to talk to them because more of the crowds have started on the other side. The other thing that you could do is start in the middle and go by your target list of employers to meet, and pretty much whatever you can think of that makes sense to hit every booth that is on your priority list, and make sure that you're sort of maximizing the time that you have at the event. Also during the fair, a couple of pointers in terms of when you're actually talking with the representatives. One of the most important pieces of networking, job search, just in general, is a firm handshake. You want to make sure that the first exchange that you have with that individual is a nice firm handshake. You make direct eye contact and smile, that you maintain good posture and manners. This is something that you want to keep in mind, that, as I said before, job fairs can certainly be exhausting, and as tired as you are from talking with people and standing and trying to sort of put your best foot forward and be confident, those employer representatives are exhausted as well. Many times they've had to say the same thing over and over 100 times, so they're also exhausted. So keep in mind that you want to make sure that you're friendly, that you mind your manners, and that you sort of maintain that firm handshake, eye contact, and good posture every time you meet someone new. As I said before, you want to maximize the time that you're there. So you want to keep in mind that you've done all that research ahead of time for a reason. You already should know what the employers do. If you've got that employer on your priority list, you already should know what that company's mission is, what kind of business they do, what kind of job opportunities they may have available, so that you're able to use that valuable face time to talk about yourself, to provide them with your pitch, describe your qualifications and value, give them something to remember you by, rather than asking questions of them about their company. This is something that you should have already done in advance. Remember that you should be persistent, and this is true throughout a job search, but especially when you're at career fairs, it can be tiring, and you might have an employer on your priority list who is also on every other job seeker's priority list, and every time you try to go to the booth, the line just looks like it's getting longer and longer, and it's certainly exhausting. But once maybe you take a few minutes, sit down, have a drink of water, and then you go back to that booth and you wait in line. And while you're waiting in line, you can be reading over the materials that you have collected from other booths. You can be rereading your resume while you're waiting in line. You can be on your LinkedIn app on your phone, connecting with recruiters that you've met that day. Keep in mind that you want to maximize the time you're there, but be persistent and don't give up. It's hard to stay patient at job fairs, but it certainly pays off once you've had the opportunity to meet that person that's been high on your priority list. And finally, be open-minded and respectful. You may approach a job fair thinking there's only 2 employers that I really am interested in today. So you're thinking you go to the job fair for 15 minutes, you talk to those 2 employers, and you're out of there. But my advice to you is to be open-minded. When you arrive at the event and you look at the attendee list, maybe those 2 employers had to cancel. So you're already there at the event and you want to take a few minutes and really look closely and think, well, you know, maybe I wouldn't have considered this company previously, but perhaps they have opportunities that are relevant to my background. And also keep in mind that you want to be respectful. Sometimes there may be employers that are not as well known and they don't have as high of a priority on many people's lists, and you'll see a long line at one employer and right next to them there's an employer that doesn't have anyone they're speaking to. Maybe you take a couple of minutes, speak with that person respectfully, and you never know what kind of you know, leads that could result in. So just keep in mind that you should be open-minded and respectful. The other thing to be respectful is the other job seekers who are attending an event. You know, one of the things to keep in mind is that, you know, a job seeker today could be a hiring manager tomorrow. So keep in mind that it makes a big difference sort of when you're attending job fairs to be open-minded and talk with anybody that, you know, that you might have the opportunity to meet. So in closing about my remarks on career fairs, I wanted to share with you some perspectives that I picked up when I worked as a recruiter myself some years ago. And this is something that I touched on briefly a moment ago. Don't use that time at the career fair when you're meeting an employer to ask what their organization does or which jobs they have available. This is where your researching in advance comes into play. We want, as recruiters, we want to be able to hear about you. When we're attending those fairs, we're just as exhausted as you are. So we want that time to be spent learning about you and getting an idea of how you can bring value to our organizations, rather than having to spend that time telling you what you can find out easily on our website or LinkedIn page. And it makes a big difference when a job seeker goes to an employer and says, you know, I was just looking, I just noticed that you've been tweeting a lot about the acquisition of such and such company. That's so exciting. How will that impact your revenues for the coming year? And they'll be impressed that you've taken the time to really do your research and figure some things out about their company that would be important. And that way you're able to talk with them about something other than what does your company do and what kind of jobs do you have available. Another thing to keep in mind, and this is where I think a lot of people feel like job fairs are not an effective use of time for job search. Many times an organization will not accept your resume and they'll instead recommend that you apply online. So even if they don't take your resume at the job fair, they might still take your personal business card and they will definitely make notes about you, particularly if they feel you're a very strong candidate for the opportunities they have and they want to make sure that they remember you. So just keep that in mind when you're talking with those employers and you're getting that face time. They're generally not accepting applications because they're following employment regulations, and every organization in their hiring has to track applicant data closely. So keep that in mind, that they may wish that they could accept resumes because that might make their job a little bit easier, but they're just simply not allowed to do that. So the advice, you know, is to really do as they tell you. If they say, I'm sorry, we're not accepting resumes, but I would recommend you go onto our website and apply for this account coordinator position that's available. Do that and then follow up with the person. One of the things you want to make sure that you do, particularly if they won't accept your resume, is find out how you can follow up with them and do exactly as they instruct you, and then do that. Okay, this concludes the remarks that I've shared about career fairs. As I had said before, I encourage you to send in questions relating to career fairs, as well as anything having to do with networking. I'm going to take a few minutes and just sort of review the themes from our webinars, parts 1 and 2, and then I'll go through and answer the questions. So our part 1 webinar was a networking career panel. And we opened that particular webinar with some information and instruction on the personal pitch, which I mentioned earlier. This is sort of your career mission statement and how you would respond to tell me about yourself if you're in a job interview or at a networking event. Typically, the personal pitch has 4 parts. Number 1, what you're doing now. Number 2, what you did before. Number 3, what you want to do next. And number 4, a call to action or unique characteristic. I could spend a long time talking about the personal pitch, but this is just sort of the basic review of what that particular, of an easy way to come up with a pitch that's useful and effective for you. Some of the themes that were touched on by our 2 panelists during that career panel regarding networking is that it should be approached as a two-way street. The idea isn't to meet someone at an event, ask for their help, they say no, and that's it. It's more of a cyclical process where you're talking with a person, learning about them, figuring out if there's something you can do to help them, and they're in turn figuring out if there's something they can do to help you. Another thing that came through from our panelists was to really stay focused, and when you're networking, to keep in mind that even though things take a while and it's sort of a slow, gradual process, you should stay focused and make sure that you really, you have a target job or industry or organization, and make sure that you align all of your efforts with that particular focus. And that's sort of one of the effective ways to approach networking, so that even if you are not seeing immediate results, if everything is focused and aligned with that particular target, it's definitely effective in the long run. And along with that, be patient, be persistent. You want to make sure that you understand that networking is a process. It's about building relationships, helping others, and allowing them to help you when they can. Something that came through in this panel, which is I think crucial in any sort of networking, is to do your research. If someone reaches out to you via social networking on LinkedIn, do your research on who that person is. Where are they located? What kinds of, what's their reason for contacting you? Maybe there's something you can do to help them rather than them helping you. Along those same lines, LinkedIn is crucial. This is sort of a theme that comes up anytime you have a conversation about networking. Both of our panelists spoke about how LinkedIn is extremely useful for networking and making sure that you're building relationships and maintaining relationships. And finally, another thing that came through on this panel was to really tap into that hidden job market. There's a lot of statistics out there, but the vast majority is that more jobs are not posted than are posted. So that's why it's crucial to make sure that you're networking in order to tap into that hidden job market. If you were not able to attend part 1, or if you were able to attend part 1 of our networking webinar series, I urge you to check out the recording. You can find that recording on the SPS YouTube channel on the Career Services playlist. So our part 2, all about networking webinar, was entitled Networking Beyond the Norm. And in this particular webinar, we covered a couple of different topics that involved networking beyond the traditional face-to-face back and forth networking event. And one of those, again, crucial topics is LinkedIn. Something that, you can take away is that in my research, I found that I believe it was 85% of companies use social media for recruiting. And of those, 96% of those recruiters use LinkedIn. So that's where they're going to find candidates for their opportunities, and that's where you should be going to find jobs. I'll just sort of leave it at that because the numbers are, definitely, they sort of show how crucial it is to use LinkedIn. Some of the, primary ways you can use LinkedIn effectively for your job search and networking, the groups functions, whether it's related to your school community, your industry, a particular technology field, organizations. The groups function very well and allow you to sort of engage with people on LinkedIn in lots of different ways. Obviously, your connections, the more connections you have on LinkedIn, the more powerful the site will be for you. If you're trying to build more connections on the site, I recommend starting in your sort of close inner circle with your close friends, closest colleagues, and family, and then moving beyond that to people you may have worked with previously, classmates, instructors, vendors, clients, things like that. Another important thing about LinkedIn is they do have jobs listed, and it's recommended that, if possible, apply through LinkedIn, or if you're looking at job posting websites outside of LinkedIn, you may want to see if a job is posted on LinkedIn instead, because you may be able to see the individual who is responsible for hiring for that position. Finally, last but not least, research. LinkedIn is an extremely valuable tool to research organizations, industries, even people who you might be scheduled to interview with. So keep in mind when you're preparing for interviews or networking events or job fairs that LinkedIn is a great resource to use in doing your research ahead of time. Also, in this second webinar, we covered the topic of informational interviews. Informational interviews differ from typical job interviews in that they're not based on you interviewing for a specific job. They're more an opportunity for you to network, to ask for advice on your job search, and get ideas on what might be effective for you to, what types of strategies might be effective for you to use in your job search. And I just kind of put in a quote in this section because I think it encompasses a lot of the point of informational interviews, that it's not what you know, it's who you know, and perhaps even more importantly, it's who knows you. And again, going back to the idea that networking is a two-way street and it's all about building relationships, if you're conducting informational interviews with people that work in the field you would like to work in, it gives them an opportunity to get to know you, and it makes them feel more comfortable and interested in your success. So if you take the time to ask someone for advice and ideas and really allow them to feel like they are the expert, they're going to be a lot more likely to pick up the phone the next time they hear about a job opening in their company or in their industry. So informational interviews are a very, very useful way to network, find out about job opportunities, and, really sort of build a network. Other themes that we covered in the Networking Beyond the Norm workshop, these were covered by Kelsey Richardson, include volunteerism. And this is, the idea that you can give back to the community and those organizations and people around you, and at the same time network, meet new people. It also allows organizations a chance to get sort of a sneak peek at your abilities, and it gives them an opportunity to see the work that you do, so that if they have a paying position open up, then you've already got one foot in the door as a volunteer. Volunteerism also allows you to have sort of firsthand knowledge of an organization and its people and what kinds of openings they might be having available. So it's all around a great idea to sort of use volunteer work as a way to network. Another great way to do that is to join professional associations. Particularly if you're currently a student, many professional associations have reduced memberships for students. So it's a great idea to look into what types of professional organizations are out there based on the industry you're interested in and see if there's something that you can join. Professional associations many times have networking events. They have career development seminars. They have other seminars related to the industry. And sometimes they even have membership lists available so that you can find people to reach out to for informational interviewing and other networking. So overall, professional associations can be a really good way to make sure that you're getting out there and networking and building relationships. Finally, last but not least, campus involvement. Here at SPS, we have a recently formed student association. That can be a great way to, not only meet new people and get involved, but it can also allow you to build leadership skills and really boost your resume. Much like professional associations, campus involvement and leadership on your campuses can be a really good way to network, to meet new people, to give back to your institution. And overall, it's just a really good way to make sure that you're sort of networking and getting yourself out there beyond just going to networking events. Once again, this particular webinar will soon be posted to YouTube. So keep in mind that that will be available to you as well, also through the SPS YouTube channel on the Career Services playlist. So before I move into the questions and answers, I just wanted to mention a couple of things to really help all of you tie all of this stuff about networking together. I think it's no surprise, and all of us know that job search is an incredibly daunting task. And I think many people believe, and I'm one of them, that networking is probably the most difficult part of job search, but it's also the most important. So what I want to, tell you is that applying to jobs online is still definitely necessary, but being able to network effectively and finding ways to do that in addition to applying to jobs online is what will really be most effective. It may take a while, but it's definitely the most effective. Going to events and job fairs, getting involved as a volunteer in your community, attending industry events, getting involved with professional associations, personal branding, using LinkedIn and other social media sites, doing informational interviewing. Those are some of the most useful strategies to put into practice in addition to applying to jobs online. And finally, it takes time and effort, but networking works to get you to work. All right, so that concludes the remarks. I'm going to go ahead and get started answering some of the questions that have come in. Keep in mind we've got about 15 minutes left, so now is your chance to send us questions about networking. I will do my best to address them. Okay, bear with me a second. Okay, here's a couple of questions specific to CareerFo, so I'll go ahead and address those, and feel free to send in other questions as well related to networking. Okay, the first one is asking about, and I touched on this a little bit, if you're doing that research ahead of time and you find that there is a job posted at a particular company that will be attending the job fair, does it make sense to do a specific targeted cover letter for that position and bring that to the job fair? I imagine that there are probably some different lines of thought on this, but I actually don't recommend bringing a cover letter to a job fair, even in this situation. I think, after having attended job fairs as a recruiter, the amount of paperwork and resumes that you're receiving is overwhelming. And I just think that a recruiter is not likely to take the time to read the cover letter at the job fair. And if they even accept the resume, I just don't know that it's likely they'll really give it much time in reading after the job fair either. So in that situation, as I had said before, I would recommend putting a summary and sort of specific objective statement on your resume that describes your interests, and make sure you're touching on specifically what that particular job is. And then when you talk with that employer, make sure that you can speak specifically about that job and describe exactly how you qualify for that job. Sort of give a brief introduction and targeted cover letter remark to that person when you meet them. Along the same lines of talking with employers, what is an appropriate amount of time to speak with recruiters at the employer tables? This is a tough question, and I think it varies. You know, particularly if it's an extremely crowded event and there are, you know, lines of people waiting to speak to a particular employer, you may have 1 minute to meet that person. In that case, you want to make sure that you get your personal pitch out clearly and articulately, and you ask for next steps. If it's not a real crowded event and it seems like the employer is interested in speaking with you more, then you might spend 5 minutes speaking with that person. I think the important thing to keep in mind, much as you would during a job interview, is follow the lead of the employer. If they're continuing to talk with you and they seem to be making a lot of eye contact, continuing to ask you questions, then by all means, don't cut the conversation short. However, if they are looking around your shoulder, if they check their watch, things like that, follow their cues. And if it seems like they, you know, are ready to move on, then, you know, maybe you say something like, would it be okay if I followed up with you about this position? I'm definitely interested in your organization. Can I get your business card? Figure out some way to sort of close the conversation and give them a call to action, or ask them what the call to action can be. I hope that's answered that question. It's kind of, a lot of times I think it depends on sort of the pace of the event and how crowded it is. Okay. Are there certain interview questions that should be practiced in case an employer decides to conduct a mini interview with me at the career fair? This does happen on occasion. And this is, again, where your preparation and research comes in. I think it makes sense that for anyone, if you're actively job searching and planning to attend career fairs, that you have an idea of, you know, how to answer some of the basic behavioral questions, how to answer questions about your strengths, your weaknesses. Obviously, the personal pitch can come into play here. I also think it would make sense that, particularly if you're doing your research and you know that an employer has a specific job that's open that you're interested in applying for, make sure that you have a grasp on what that particular job involves and you know how your resume relates to those qualifications. That way, if they ask you questions in the interview at the job fair, you're able to really show them that you've done your research and that you're serious about your job search and about their organization. Okay, feel free to keep sending your questions in. Here's something else that's come through as far as following up after career fairs. What's the best way to follow up after career fairs, and how much is too much? So this is a question that we hear a lot, and I think it's a great one. It's important to keep in mind that when you're following up with employers after a career fair, you want to make sure that you follow their lead, but you also want to make sure that you definitely take the time to follow up. Many job seekers that I would meet as a recruiter at job fairs would say, yeah, absolutely, I'll follow up with you. And I didn't necessarily give my business card to every person I met at a job fair. I specifically would give my business card to those individuals that I felt would be very strong candidates. And it said a lot to me as a recruiter if they didn't take the time to follow up with me. So no matter what, follow up with everyone. Particularly if you speak with them for a long period of time about a specific position and they've advised you that they think you're a good, strong candidate. If they have said, please apply online for this position and follow up with me, make sure you do just that. Another thing that I think is useful in follow-up is LinkedIn. If you can send a recruiter an invitation to connect, then you can send them a message on LinkedIn, and that way you're sort of building that relationship and figuring out a way to maintain it. I certainly think that email is a better way to follow up than phone. It just sort of allows the person to see your name in print and maybe take a minute to look for you on LinkedIn rather than just calling a person and then they're not prepared to be able to speak with you. So that makes a lot of sense. The other thing to keep in mind is that you know, it's important to sort of be persistent with following up, and you want to make sure that you're, you know, using your due diligence in following up, particularly if a person says thank you for you know, thank you for meeting with me, thank you for following up, let me get back to you in a week, and you don't hear from them, follow their lead and follow up with them. If you feel like you're being too pushy with the person, then, you know, maybe back off a little bit. I think it's important to be persistent but not pushy, and to be confident but not cocky in your follow-up. Keep sending your questions in. We've got just a few more minutes left. If there's anything else that's come up, remember, I'm happy to answer questions about networking in general, so it doesn't have to just be about career fairs. Here's a question that we got. What are some examples of workshops that are offered as part of a career fair? I'm not really sure if I know what this is referring to, but I've seen in some instances an event organizer will have sort of a career day, and they'll have maybe experts in the field or volunteers or career coaches that will go to an event, and they'll do some resume workshops and other sorts of career development preparation in the early part of the day, and then in the afternoon there'll be the opportunity to network with employers. I've seen that occurring before. I'm not sure if that's exactly what the question was, but that's sort of something that I've noticed previously. A couple of other things related to job fairs to keep in mind. Occasionally you'll see information about job fairs, but they're virtual. And I don't have a lot of personal experience with virtual job fairs, but I think they can certainly be another effective way to job search. But I think it's also important, if you're preparing for virtual job fairs, that you get comfortable using technology, and that if you're communicating with employers via chat features or with a video setting, that you make sure you're using that to the best of your ability in advance of the event, so that you, again, maximize the time that you spend within those virtual events. It looks like we're almost at the end of our workshop time, so if there are no more questions, I just wanted to take a minute and thank all of you for attending today's webinar, certainly. And if you were able to attend our Part 1 or Part 2 of our webinar series, thank you for joining us on those. We will be sending a quick survey out after today's webinar, so I urge all of you to please respond to that and let me know what you thought of today's webinar. I hope that you've enjoyed the presentation, and once again I'd like to thank Kelsey Richardson and Anthony Sweeney for all of their help today and throughout the semester with our webinars, and I wish all of you the best of luck in your networking and job search.